Computer audio, share screen, whole screen. Hello, hello, hello. Boom, 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 boom. Bum, 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 bum. Well, hello, everyone. Oh, y'all ready for the tropical storm? I can't be the only one that kept checking to see if class was canceled. We'll give everybody a couple more minutes. I want a few people more to show up because today's class is gonna kind of go. We're probably gonna end up spending quite a bit of time on some of this stuff. So I would like a few more people to be here. So I'll just put we'll start in a sec. We'll at least start by 11:05. Let's put it that way.
So tell me, didn't call me back. So
Okay, I guess it's just us. Oh, and Victoria. All right. Um, so so for today, um, we're gonna start on a new song, and this is actually gonna be one of the songs that we take from beginning to end, because we're kind of getting to the point where we've gone over everything. For the most part, today we're going to talk about internal busing and auxiliary sends and grouping things together using the busing system and auxiliary tracks and kind of how to use those. And then after that, I want to go over, we're going to start working with compression. And, hopefully I can give you a good idea how to use it. Um, with EQs, it's kind of like you can hear something and be like, I don't like that. With compressors, you kind of got to think a bit more because too much compression just can really kind of ruin things. Um, but the first thing I want to go over is auxiliary tracks in Pro Tools. So whenever you make a new track, you have a few options. Uh, Mono or stereo, which of course mono means that it's just going to be in the middle, and stereo you'll have a left right track. Um, so audio tracks obviously are for audio files. Your master fader is going to be for any analog outputs going out. That's why we make a master fader right here so we can make sure we aren't clipping the output. And then beyond that, the next most used is going to be auxiliary input. So if I make, I'm just going to make a few of those. So auxiliary inputs for Pro Tools are basically are utility channels. They can be used to either send multiple instruments to the auxiliary track, or they can be used as an auxiliary send. So they're kind of multi-purpose, and there's a few other things that you can do with auxiliary tracks too, which we probably won't go over just because you end up not using it a lot, or you end up painting yourself in the corner over it. Um, so in Pro Tools, again, there's, you have the analog side, which is whatever's hooked up to your interface, which would be outputs. And then you have the busing section. And all busing does is it just sends audio from one place to another. So I could send it to like sidechain a compressor. I could send it to a group and use an auxiliary track as like my group setting for the drums, send them all out to one auxiliary track. Or I could use it as an auxiliary send to send it over there. There's other ways. There's other things you can do. Also, you can bus audio track into another audio track and re-record it. So busing, just remember, busing is how you send stuff around in Pro Tools. And then the auxiliary tracks are kind of how you get the audio back in from the busing system. There are utility tracks, and we'll kind of go over some more of that. First we'll go with grouping. Well, first, actually, let me play this song because this is going to be a song that we take from beginning to end. It's from a client that I had worked with in the past. It's a good song, so hopefully we don't get tired of it. There's a lot of stuff that we can do. There's going to be a lot of grouping and side chaining and stuff like that because it is kind of there's a lot of like pads and synths and stuff that don't really push and pull with each other. So I'll just kind of hit play so we can listen to a little bit of it, and I'm gonna speed it up a little bit.
I'm lying on the floor. Everything hurts when I'm sober. Memories from the night before. I thought we said this was over, but you keep coming back for more. And I'm the only one that you call when you're lonely. I know you're headed for the door, yeah, but you don't wanna leave me. Why would you leave me? I know that you need me. find you for the night, but I want you for the day. Please, please stay. 'Cause you're the only one who makes me feel this way.
So that's kind of the gist of the song, you know, verse, the hook. Um, so everything's going to kind of, you know, we're going to work in order of grouping and using auxiliary sends and compression and EQ. We're going to use it on this track and take it, you know, all the way from beginning to end, so we can kind of see the whole process. Hold on, let me go back. There we go. So first, let's kind of talk about grouping tracks together, because that's one of the two main ways to use auxiliary tracks. Remember, these are just kind of our utility tracks. So I'm going to get rid of everything except for the drums, so we can just kind of hear that. Let me fast forward to. So if we're wanting to EQ the entire drum set or compress the entire drum set, or maybe, you know, add effects to things, you're going to want to group them together. And that's done through the busing system and through the auxiliary tracks here. So I'll take one and kind of move it over. And in order for us to get signal, you know, to the actual auxiliary track, we have to pick a bus that we want to put it on. So we can pick, you know, right now we can just pick 1 and 2, 3 and 4. You can make as many of these buses as you want. If you have the regular version, it's like 128. It's a bunch. But in order to get signal from the drums into the auxiliary strip, we have to tell it what bus to send out, like where to send it out, where it should come back. So if I send it all out bus 1 and 2, and there's no bus 1 and 2 inputs, and I hit play, you know, the meters are going to bounce, but nothing is going to, you know, nothing's going to play back because we haven't told it what to. So again, if I put bus 1 and 2 here, it should play. Okay. Now from here, you know, from here we could EQ stuff. You could put compression on it. So grouping tracks together, it comes in handy. There is one weird thing about using bus tracks. I'll mute you guys. There is one thing about using bus tracks, is like if we play the drums here, and we try to solo something. Let's do that real quick. I'll just play. If I want to solo the kick drum, you don't hear anything after that. Because what's happening is you're soloing this, but it's being sent over to this little group track, and you can see it's not soloed here. So if I hit solo, you'll hear it. But there's an easier way to do this. On Windows, I believe it's Control Click. I think on Mac, it's, oh gosh, Command Click. I'm not terribly sure. It's one of the modifiers. It's either Command, Option, or Control if you're on Mac. So what this does is you'll notice it'll gray it out. So this is called solo safe. So this auxiliary track is no longer affected by the solo system. So if I hit play and I solo this, it won't solo here. Same if I hit play and, you know, solo this. It's not affected by the solo system. That's one of just the kind of weird quirks about Pro Tools, because Pro Tools can kind of be whatever you want it to be. So having it not solo or solo safe is something that you'll have to do. And sometimes you have to do it on analog consoles. I think the old SSLs are that way. Most of the time it's not. But pretty much anytime you're going to send something to one of the auxiliary tracks, which is our utility track, you don't want it affected by the solo system. So pretty much every time you open up one, you get in the habit of just kind of clicking. It's control click for me. I'm on Windows, to take it out of the solo system. And I'll show you another reason why here in a little bit. But grouping tracks together like this is kind of one of the essential ways to condense big mixes into a reasonable, a reasonable way to work it. Because now I have all the drums going over here. Not only can I process them all together, I also have a fader for their general overall level. So it comes in handy if you have a lot of drum tracks, a lot of guitar tracks, a lot of synth tracks, or something like that. If you group them all together into a separate auxiliary tracks on analog consoles, these would be your group tracks. It just makes it easier to handle because you can have all the drums on one, all the bass on another, guitars, vocals, and then you can control the entire mix with just four faders. So you can kind of turn things up, kind of turn things down. And there's other nuances to this once we start getting into processing, specifically compression, and using group tracks like this. You can do some really cool stuff. The next big way to do it is to use it as an auxiliary return. And we say return because it's what's going to be coming in the input that really matters. Our send will go out on the track. So if we want to, let's say if we want to add reverb to, what is this? Is this the snare? No. Is this the snare? That'll work. Say if we want to add reverb to this sound right here, there's going to be two ways to do it. Either I can put it, oh, I got my inserts all weird. Oh, no, I don't. Let me get rid of some of this stuff. Oops, I want to switch that. No, that's right. So there's two ways to do this, right? If you make a lot of music, you probably normally will just stick a reverb on that right there. So I just pick BX Room. A lot of times, people starting out, they'll put the reverb right here, and they'll mess with the mix knob, the wet dry knob, to kind of get it. To kind of get it to where you want it. There's not a whole lot of good things about doing it that way. First off, anything you do before or after this is going to directly affect that reverb sound. So typically when you're mixing, you don't want to get pigeonholed in a corner because of this. So a lot of times you'll see people use auxiliary sends for it. And that would be like if I decided to send this out 3 and 4. So now I get a fader over here. And if I turn it up, nothing's going to happen because I don't have a return for it. It's not coming back in anywhere. So for this case, I want to go ahead and set the other one. We'll set it to 3 and 4, and we'll put a reverb on this one. And then you can use the little fader level right here to adjust the reverb to it. And then whenever you do anything on the track, if you EQ it, if you compress it, if you do crazy stereo width stuff to it, it doesn't affect what's going to the reverb because the reverb's just coming out after that. So you don't get stuck in a hole. One of the other things, and the biggest thing for doing auxiliary sends like this, is you really get to customize what's going on in your reverb return because you have inserts on it. So I can take it and I can say, okay, well, I like it, but maybe I can take, you know, an EQ and kind of cut out, I don't know, some brightness from it. So, and then on top of that, you can do stuff. You can add, like if you do like an imager on top of that to make your reverb sound really big. Let's do spacious high end. Well, that's funny because I cut the high end, but we can try it. So, so you get doing it this way, you get so much more control over it. Um, you know, that's the biggest reason for doing auxiliary sends versus just putting it on the track. Now there are times where I will put a reverb on like a main track as an insert, but most of the time that's like whenever you're doing like the Travis Scott ad lib effect. You're just like, screw it, I'm just going to put a reverb exactly on it because that's, you know, that's going to be the whole track. And you can kind of dial it in from there. Another reason for using auxiliary tracks like this as sends and then have the returns is you kind of start building like a cohesive sound with things. So if you have the drums and you're sending them all to the same reverb, it kind of helps put them all into a singular space, basically, because they're all using the same reverb. They're all in the, you know, you're simulating the same room for all the instruments. So it adds a bit of cohesion to it. Does anybody have any questions so far? Because I feel like I've kind of gone a little fast, but you know, the more we do it, the more things will start making sense. Also, cool. All right. And if you look on all the consoles you see out there, and most software, mixing software, you'll get two options for using auxiliary sends. You get a pre and post option. In default, the way Pro Tools works is it does it pre-fader, or I'm sorry, post-fader. So what happens there is if I boost the reverb up a bunch and I pull the fader down, what's being sent to the reverb comes down with it. So it's being affected directly by this fader down here, the level being sent out. And that's fantastic for things like effects, because as you move the fader, you don't have to, come back here and readjust. If I send it pre-fader, then this fader right here means nothing to what's being sent. So it's pre-fader. A lot of people will be like, well, then what's the use of sending it pre-fader? And the main use for sending things pre-fader is for headphone mixes, because you can send it. Not only can you use these sends for your buses, your internal routing, you can also send it out out of your interface. We'll get more into that whenever we actually start recording, which will be after midterms, because then that comes in really handy, because you can adjust things all you want down here and it won't mess with their headphones. Like you could even solo stuff and their headphone mix still goes. You can also route things differently. Like if you had a click track and you're sending it to somebody's headphones, and it's playing out also, and you're tired of hearing the click track, because most of the time you are, you can use the pre-fader and send it out pre-fader and then just mute it, because it comes out before any of this matters. Does that make sense so far? Yeah, cool. And the other thing I want to point out here is whenever we're looking at this drum group together, we could do something here. And you hit play. watch what happens to the meter right here if I move it. So we're obviously changing the output level, but if you notice the meter, that's funny, that thing still goes. But if you notice the meter hasn't changed. So Pro Tools has two ways to meter things. And this goes back to kind of like the sends. There's before and after the fader, right? So if we send this before, then whatever we do here, it doesn't matter. Same thing with Pro Tools overall. You have a pre-fader and post-fader option of metering. So if you go to options and you look down here at pre-fader metering, that's how you turn that on and off. So if I turn it off and do it now, you can see my volume meter is affected by the level now. So those both, they both have their pluses and minuses. When you're recording stuff, you almost always want it pre-fader. That way you can see what's being recorded at the levels, no matter what your fader volume is set to. It'll always show what's coming off of Pro Tools, whatever the audio track is. So, and we'll keep going into that. If you don't understand it right now, we'll keep working on it. And if you have questions, please feel free to ask me. So those are kind of two things to be aware of. For mixing, a lot of times you want it post meter because you want to see if you're clipping, if I'm clipping the output on this. That's funny, I started way back. You want to see that, and you want to see as you pull it down where you're clipping, where you're not clipping, where all your levels are. So yeah, that's as far as using auxiliary tracks, that's kind of it in a nutshell. We use it for two main things: is for grouping tracks together, and for using it as like effect sends. There's other reasons to use it. Like you could set it up to one of your analog inputs and have it set up to like an MP3 player, iPhone player or whatever. So whenever clients come over, they just plug in their phone, hit play, and it already has an input output, and it just sits there idle otherwise, unless something's plugged into it. And there's other crazy ways to use it. But for the most part, that's going to be it. Definitely remember the solo safe, because I don't think you can. You can't right click on it and get to it. It is a control click. I think Mac, it's either control command or option click is going to be that. So we'll use quite a bit of this for this song. Any questions on this?
No.
Okay. Thanks for the confirmation. So, and this will be something, the more you use it, the more you'll figure it out. The more things will start making sense. We had this on the last one, using it as auxiliary sends for reverb. And that's what I mean for that track, or for that project. The next thing I want to get onto is compression. Compressors are finicky things. They're not like EQs, where you can go in and EQ about every single thing on a mix, and it will be fine. If you go in there and put compressors on everything in a mix, it's probably not going to sound right. And that's because compression, you don't always need compression. You don't always need EQ, but you can practically EQ anything and be fine. So going over compressors, we're really going to go through the thought process of why you would need a compressor on something. And if you guys aren't familiar with the way compressors work, we're going to go over that too. Let me see if I got my thingy. So there is one very important fact about compressors, and this will come in later also. Is the way compressors work is it'll come in on the input, and what happens is the signal gets split. So you have the input go through the gain control element, basically how it's gonna do its job, and the sidechain here. Compressors, I guess I should have started at the actual compressor thing. What compressors actually do is compressors let us modify volume levels. And we can kind of exploit that several ways. So we have EQs where you can adjust frequency, and then compressors are how we adjust volumes. So typically the way a compressor works is whenever the signal goes over a threshold, a set threshold, it'll turn it down by a specific value that you tell it. Now, the thing with this is you also get an attack time and a release time on how it reacts. If you guys are familiar with synths and stuff like that, the ADSR envelope is practically what it is. It's a attack, decay, sustain, release envelope for volume levels. So whenever we look at a compressor, I don't know if I have a compressor pulled up. I'll just kind of pull up. We'll do the townhouse. So when you pull up a compressor, you're going to typically have certain settings. You're going to have the threshold, which the threshold is whenever the signal goes over that amount, when is it going to kick in? So here, whenever the volume goes over, the threshold is set. Oh, this is going to get all complicated. The threshold is set at +3. So whenever it goes over +3, it decides to react and turn down the audio. The attack time, or the ratio after that, is going to be how much does it turn it down by. So if you have a 2-to-1 ratio, that means for every 2 it goes over, it's going to turn it down by 1. So if you have your threshold set at 0 and it goes up 2, well, the ratio is 2-to-1, so it's going to turn it down to 1. And then the attack time is how fast does it take, or how long does it take before it engages this, volume turning down based off the ratio. And then the release is how long it takes to release it. That's really the technical ideas behind compression and how it works like that. But whenever that's the technical, dorky side about how compressors work. That's what is it, Mr. Wells is going to talk to you about when you take audio electronics, But as an audio engineer, we kind of look at these things differently. The technical stuff aside, knowing that whenever it reaches the threshold, it's going to turn it down, and how much is it going to turn it down, and how long does it take to do all this? So we can think of the ratio, threshold is obviously going to set it. We can think of the ratio of how hard is it going to compress. So if we have a high ratio, it's going to compress hard. So you can think of things like, do I want it to compress hard on this, the artist's really smooth vocal? Probably not. But do I want it to hit hard on drums? Well, then, maybe, so that's kind of ratio in a nutshell, thinking of it from the engineer's perspective. The higher the ratio, typically the more aggressive things get. And what do you want to sound aggressive in the song? Do you want the drums to sound aggressive? Do you want to try and get the guitars to sound aggressive? Synths, stuff like that. So that's kind of ratio in a nutshell. Not all compressors have ratio, but the ones that do, you know, you can use that as kind of a guidance. And then the real magic in compressors isn't with threshold or ratio. It's the attack and release time. The attack and release times on compressors is practically, you know, that's the magic in it. Because the attack time and the release time is going to dictate how it acts. So if you have it acting, you know, really fast, with a really fast release, fast attack, fast release is going to act different than if you have a really slow attack, really slow release. And then this is where we start getting into what do we want to do with these compressors. We know we can, you know, make the ratio high to make it aggressive and attack times fast and slow, and we can make things, you know, the volume levels, you know, change at different times and at different levels. So there's the way I've always kind of looked at it is I think it's like 4 main reasons. And I'm going to post this for you guys also. There's 4 main reasons to manipulate the levels in a song, right? Because compressors are all about volume. Oh gosh, I cannot spell optical. I kid, guys. I can spell. So compressors are going to adjust, you know, the levels. So what is affected by that level? Like, what do you want to do with the levels? There's kind of 4 main ways to go about doing this, and to think about it. The first is to tame transients. And what I mean, if you guys haven't seen transients, what is this thing? Let's play this. So if we look at it, this leading edge right here, oh, got too much stuff open. This is going to be the transient, basically. It hits hard and then it decays after that. So that is something that we can manipulate with these volume, you know, dependent processors. So we can look at it, and we can either tame the transient or enhance the transient. And what I mean by that is to tame the transient. Like if we start thinking about this in our little ADSR envelope, right? If we want to tame the transient, I'm going to scooch over. This thing's giant. If we want to tame the transient, how, you know, we want to shave off the front end, right? We don't want that initial spike in volume to hit so hard. So we should probably, if we're looking at our attack phase, because that's going to say, how is this going to react whenever it comes in, when it goes over the threshold, how is this going to react? Well, then if we want to cut that off, we definitely want the attack fast, because as soon as it happens, we want the volume level to get turned down on that thing, right? And then our release kind of dictates how the tail works. So if we have a fast attack and it kicks in really fast, and then we have a long release, it's going to kick in really fast, turn it down, and then it's going to take a while before it actually, the volume actually like goes back up. So that would be, you know, kind of taming it. If we wanted to enhance it, you kind of do it the opposite way with the attack, right? You would let the initial transient go through before it clamped down. So you would actually let the first little punch through, and then have the compressor kick in. So you want a little bit slower attack, and maybe a faster release. The release time's interesting. Once we get into stuff, we'll really see how this affects things. But you can think of compressors as a transient shaping tool, right? You can make it less punchy, you can make it more punchy. Um, you can also think of it as pushing it to the back, pushing it a little bit further back into the sound stage. Because if you take off the initial transient, it turns down the volume, which in a soundstage sense will push the instrument back in a mix. As the volume gets louder, it's pushing it forward towards you. What do you want to do there? Do you want to push it back or pull it forward? So if you want to push it back, you want to tame the transient. If you want to push it forward, you kind of enhance the transient. Another way to think about compression is just as a overall overall volume leveler. There's things, especially like bass and vocals especially. You want things to sit into place. You don't, you just want them to sit in place and not get real loud, not be overly dynamic. You just want it just locked in right there. So that's kind of what I call a leveler effect by it. And we'll get into a little bit of that. There's some specifics about using things as a leveler. And then the last way to think about compressors compression is to make things pump and bounce, to make things move. And it's kind of hard to explain, but if you think about music rhythmically, right? Things are set to a BPM rhythm, and as the drums play, it kind of creates that rhythm. And if you have like another instrument that it plays to a different rhythm, then they're not going to match up well. You're going to have the drums moving and breathing one way, and you're going to have other instruments moving and breathing another way, and things just aren't going to lock together. So you can kind of use compressors to really pump and push and pull things together in unison. So you have the drums pumping at the same way the bass is pumping, the same way, the delay is pumping in the background. And all of that kind of enhances things and makes things glue together and stick together, and just sound so good. We're definitely going to talk a lot more about that. But the way I like to kind of describe it is like rubber bands. So if you imagine, if you have the drum track and you have it pushing up against a rubber band, that rubber band is going to push back against the drum track, and you want it to push in rhythm with the song and everything else. You want everything moving together. You don't want something moving one way and then another thing moving a different way. So with compressors, you can kind of work that in together. Those are going to be the four main ways to use compressors. We're also going to talk about using the sidechain inputs to get things to pump and bounce together nicely. But that's, I'll post this. This will get you, this will definitely get you started, because you can listen to something and go, okay, what do I want to do to that? Do I need to tame it? Do I need to enhance the transient? Do I just need to hold it in place? Or do I want things to bounce more? Those are going to be kind of the four main ways to go about doing that. And then along with the different compressors, the different styles of compressors all have different kind of characteristics. So I put that here also. It's, what each type of compressor can do. And there's, I think it's five main types of compressors. There's a few others, but they're kind of esoteric and you don't really see them. There's FET, which is FET compressors. It is worth whenever you look at an analog modeled compressor or anything else, it is worth knowing the different types, FET versus VCA versus diode versus Varimu, because they all react a different way. So depending on what you're doing, you're going to reach for a different style of compressor. The most famous, and we're going to do some searching. The most famous, we'll start right here. The FET compressor. The most famous FET compressor are going to be the Universal Audio 1176, which I should. This is going to be the most famous that you come across. Every studio that you go to will normally have a FET compressor, and they're normally along the lines of the 1176. 1176s, normally they have a extremely fast attack and release. And that goes for practically universal for FET compressors. So that kind of corners them into what they can do. What can a FET compressor do? Well, if you're only doing fast stuff, then you're going to really just have it taming and enhancing transients, depending on the compressor, pump and bounce. But you're not going to have it glue something in place and hold something in place like a leveler. It's just the way it works. It's just not going to work that way. And if you guys are curious, I don't know if there's any electronics people in here. But I would like to, it's going to be a bunch of soft tube stuff. Circuit. Well, we will look at the circuit design because it's a little different. So what's actually happening in a FET compressor is an actual field effect transistor is what's doing the gain reduction in it. So like I was showing in this other one, when it comes in, it gets split off. And then from the split, that's how it generates all the threshold, ratio, attack, and release. But then there has to be something to turn the volume down. And that's what makes each different compressor type, special, is what's turning the volume down. And then to separate the different styles from the different manufacturers, it's how it does it. So a field effect compressor uses a transistor, basically, to do it. Yeah, the 1176 is the most famous of those. Next, we're going to go to VCA compressor. And VCA's, so the 1176, I think, came out in the 60s, right? And it was, high technology back then. The VCA really didn't come out, I believe, until the 1970s. So the VCA is actually really interesting. Because it's gone through quite a few changes throughout the years. What a VCA stands for is voltage controlled amplifier. This isn't going to be a good one. We'll skip that. And what a voltage controlled amplifier does is it's similar to the FET. The way the FET works is that an audio signal goes out, and then it sends it a voltage, and it changes it. It changes the volume there. So it's voltage controlled amplifier. Kind of makes sense. These started out as like gigantic circuits. It was It was the DVX 202. This is one that's really cool. So the DBX 202, I don't know if you guys can see this. It was a really complex circuit going on inside there. It's real picky. All the transistors have to be matched. They were a super pain to work with back in the day. But these are one that that eventually got processed and made into an IC chip. So now VCA compressors are the most well-known, most diverse setting or most diverse group, and also they're the most popular because you can put everything on this chip and then just kind of run it from there. So VCA, because of the way it works, it's the most diverse variety of compressors. You can get ones that are fast, you can get ones that are slow, you can make things pump and breathe. The most popular one of that is the SSL bus compressor. I'm sure everybody has seen these. This is going to be the most popular one. But SSL, their channel compressors, these also used VCAs, and I think it used the same VCAs. Same VCAs, it's just the circuit is laid out differently, so it acts differently. The SSL bus compressor is super pumpy and bouncy and gluey, and the channel compressors here are, I mean, they are real punchy. Like if you want to enhance or change transients and you use the SSL channel compressor, like you're really going to be able to manipulate it, but you're not going to be able to make the SSL channel compressor act like a leveler and just hold something in place. But the what was this, DVX 160A? It's not the 160, the 160A. Yeah, I meant that. This is, you'll see these all over the place. This is also a VCA compressor, but the circuit around it is set up differently. And this thing will do the leveler thing all day long, but it won't do any of the other three. So it's definitely the most versatile of everything. So if you come across a compressor and you figure out it's a VCA, kind of expect some learning curve on it to figure out exactly how it works and stuff like that, or how it feels. Next, we have one that's called a variable mu is what it's called. This is the oldest type of compressor out there. They figured out Veramus in the 40s. The most famous Veramu compressor, oh God, what is that thing called? Oh, the Fairchild 660. Yeah, it's oh, service unavailable. It's the most popular, or it was the most popular back in its day. It is also kind of the least the least versatile out of everything. The way Veramus work, schematic, it works in similar ways to everything else that we've been talking about. So the signal basically comes in and gets split off. And then this is going to be, it's going to be kind of weird. Basically, the signal gets split off and it goes to a tube, and the tube works as a voltage controlled amplifier, works just like the way the FET compressor does. But the tube itself actually does the volume, compressing. So with that, the most famous besides the Fairchild is the Manley Veramu. And Veramus are different because there's no ratio. They work by the overall signal level. So the louder the signal level gets inside of it, the higher the ratio turns up. They are almost always slow and pumping. They can kind of act like a leveler, and they can also kind of pump and bounce with things. optical, oh yeah, let me show you this. Optical is really interesting because somebody a long time ago was like, if I put a light bulb in this thing and then I have a resistor, a light dependent resistor on the other side, I can have it to where whenever the signal splits out, um, it goes and it makes this light bulb get brighter, but then also controls the light dependent resistor right here. So whenever the light turns bright, it turns down. As you would think, it's going to be it's surprisingly. Well, I guess I don't know if surprisingly or not. It's slower than all the others. It's slower than every other compressor um, type that we've gone over. So it basically only has one place to use it is as a leveler because it's really slow. The attack is slow, the release is slow, but it's also one of the most famous compressors, the LA2A. And these things sound amazing. And these came out, I think, in the 50s. So besides Verimu, the optical was the next one. And then field effect transistor. And then diode we haven't gotten to yet. And then VCA. But, you know, you can almost always, whenever you hear optical compressor, you can always think of it as a leveling device. You're not going to get it to enhance transients or tame transients. I didn't put it there, but pump and bounce, it could make things pump, but typically it's just used as a big old squeeze and hold something in place. The last one I have on here is diode. Diode's pretty rare to find, and it's just like the way all these other ones work. Is instead of having it be an optical cell or a FET transistor or VCA, you have diodes controlling it. Diodes, for you electronic guys, basically they need a certain voltage before they start acting, and then they act practically instantaneously. So diode compressors typically will be very, very bouncy and pumpy. You can do some transient stuff to it, but it's not going to hold something in place. It's going to make things bounce and move. There's really only one company that makes them, is Neve. Probably the most famous is the 33609. Which if you ever come across one of these, or, you know, there's a few plug-in styles of these, definitely try it out, man. On drums, that sounds crazy good. On your main mix bus, it can sound really good. But knowing the different types, I know that this is all kind of long-winded. Knowing the different types and what to use where kind of goes hand in hand with what are you trying to do. So always when you're looking at the different things of what you want to do to a volume of a signal, you know, you should be thinking about the type. And the longer you do it, the more you'll start clicking with what type to use, and then you'll start figuring out, oh, there are slight differences between, you know, this FET compressor and this FET compressor, and there's differences between the different VCA compressors. I mean, there's differences from using something on a snare versus using it on a kick. You know, there's all these little nuances, and compressors more than EQs definitely all have their own character. They are totally character devices. So if I put say an LA2A on a bass, it's because I want that character of the LA2A, you know, or I want the character of an 1176. Of course, you know, the 1176 FET compressor, I'm still going to go in here, you know, and think of what I want to do. But, you know, there's different versions of these FET compressors. There's a company, let me get over here. You know, the 1176, this is the old classic. But there's another one that was made for several years called the Purple Audio MC77. and it's the same compressor, same circuit. It's just done a little bit differently, and they aren't totally different beasts, but you'll start finding that you'll lean towards one versus the other for what you want to do. So it's kind of weird. The 1176, the actual 1176, has a lot of like it kind of does like this sheen to it, and it kind of pushes things forward. Whereas the purple's it having a sheen is totally out the window, and this thing is more in your face and aggressive. Even though they're the exact same compressor circuit, it's just done slightly differently, with different values or something like that, and it has its own character. So just kind of remember that. I highly suggest when you guys are working on something, definitely try different things out, because one and the other, they may both work. Neither of them may work. One may work like surprisingly well, and more than another one of the same compressor type, pretty much. But we'll start going over that whenever we start getting into this song. You guys want to take like a 10-minute break? We'll come back at 12:11, and then we'll kind of get some of this stuff in action so we can hear it working.
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, we'll come back at 12:11. So I'll see you all then. Okay. So we're back. Let's listen to this song a little bit. Because there's a few obvious things that we can do. Um, the vocal track especially, and then probably some drum stuff, and then we'll look at the other instruments. And I specifically want to think about compression at the beginning. So we'll kind of listen and see what's up.
I'm lying on the floor. Everything hurts when I'm sober. Memories from the night before. I thought we said this was over.
Okay, so I know I said we'll start with compression, but let's actually start with the vocal track. Whenever we're listening to stuff, if it's not put in a space, and the way vocals are recorded, things don't, they're recorded dry. There's no reverb, there's no delay on it. There's nothing to help put it in space with the song. So the first thing I want to do is kind of set it into the space so we can see how it's acting in relations to everything else. So I think we're going to do effects and automation, not this next class, but the class after that. So we'll go into the different effects and stuff and how to use them, next in a week from today. So first is the vocal. Let's go ahead and put it in a space. And the way it's set up now, I have reverb on bus 3 and 4, right? So if I want to send my vocal track to this reverb, to add reverb to it without putting it on the track, because I'm going to want to do specific things to the vocal track before and after it. In order to do that, I need to send it out to this track. So bus 3 and 4 here. And you can right click on these things if you're in the full version. I don't know if the Pro Tools first updates lets you do this. It probably does. Hopefully it does. Right click on it and you can rename it. So you can rename it reverb. And now over here, you can see it shows up as reverb. And now we have our reverb send. So we can turn that up as we're playing. Let me get closer to the vocal.
I'm lying on the floor. Everything hurts when I'm sober. Memories from the night before. I thought we said this was over, but you keep coming back for more. And I'm the only one that you call when you're lonely.
And you can adjust it all from there. For now, this is fine. I just want to add a little bit of reverb to it, just to kind of put it in some sort of space, because otherwise it's just too dry to kind of figure out what's going on. Actually, let me change that. This is the reverb I actually used in the mix, but we'll try this one real quick, because I think it'll just be more immediately satisfying.
I'm lying on the floor. Everything hurts when I'm sober.
Okay, for now that's good. So now looking at the vocal more, we can kind of hear some volume differences between there, especially whenever she does like her little slight runs and vibrato stuff. Like here you can see it. Let's
Everything hurts when I'm sober.
You can hear her kind of get a little bit louder. And then later on in the song, she gets louder too.
And I'm the only one that you call when you're lonely.
So with the vocal, if we want to just kind of squeeze it, put it in place, just have it the same volume the entire time. Where's my thing? We can kind of think of it, as a leveler. So we want to squeeze it together, right? And then we kind of have an idea of the attack. I kind of put that there, a medium attack, because you don't want it to react too fast, and a medium to slow release, because you don't want to let it go too fast. Because if you jump on it too fast, you're going to be taming the initial transient. And if it's released too fast, you're kind of going to be enhancing the outgoing transient. So with levelers, we kind of have a few options here. Verumu, optical, or VCA. With vocals like this, it is the classic thing to do on singing vocals is going to be an optical compressor. So whenever we look at what optical compressors I do have the older LA2A. So this is an optical compressor. We go back to our sheet. It's almost always slow. There's no attack or release times. It works great as a leveler, which is what I want to do. So let's try that out and see what it sounds like.
I'm lying on the floor.
So the way it works is you have the volume knob and the reduction amount. So how much compression do you want? And then the makeup gain after it turns it down.
I'm lying on the floor. Everything hurts when I'm sober. Memories from the night before. I thought we said this was over, but you keep coming back for more. And I'm the only one that you call when you're lonely.
So you can just tell right off the bat, like, I am compressing it, and I turned up the gain afterwards to kind of make up for the volume change in it. But you can hardly hear that the thing is there. Like, it's very clear. It definitely squeezes the vocal into place. And that's why this is like such a classic piece of gear, because it just does that, and it does it so well. But let's look at some other optical compressor. There's another one that I have called Acme Opticon. This is also based off a hardware unit. It gives you a few different options. It gives you some response options. And it works slightly different. If you notice, there's not a gain reduction knob. You have input gain and output gain. And this is going to be the way it works in 1176s also. You'll just see an input and output gain. There's no threshold to set the level. What's actually going on here is inside of the compressor, it has a preset level. So to get to that level, you mess with the input gain to drive it over that level of the threshold, and then you back it down with the output gain. So this one is a little different. It gives us 3 different responses. Let's see how this reacts. And I'll kind of get it. I'll try and get it like the LA2A, because we were doing like 5 to 7 decibels, and it was really clear. So let's see if we can do that here. The gain reduction is going to be over here, so I'm going to try and hit kind of right here. Yeah, let's see what happens.
I'm lying on the floor. Everything hurts when I'm sober. Memories from the night before. I thought we said this was over.
It sounds surprisingly clear. They sound very, very similar. This one, honestly, I think this one just makes it sound a little bit bigger sounding. But let's try the response time. So what this is doing is it's just built-in attack and release responses. So that was the slow one to really kind of, get it in the leveler ballpark. Now let's try the fast one, which is going to be more bouncy and pumpy, and see how that reacts.
I'm lying on the floor. Everything hurts when I'm sober. Memories from the night before.
It it's a little weird because it's a little subtle on vocals. We'll try this. We'll try this compressor on other stuff too. But I can definitely hear it like, oh, there's some weirdness going on in there. I can hear like more of her breathing going on. And you can see the meter react faster on it. So again, slow versus fast. I'll just do one slow, one fast.
I'm lying on the floor. Everything hurts when I'm sober. Memories from the night before. I thought we said this was over.
So one with the slow, you can really just hear it get just real smooth and consistent volume. And with fast, you can hear like between every word, it like wants to jump back to where it was. So it's kind of exaggerating what's going on. And with the vocals, you know, what we want to do is we just want to hold it in place. We just want a leveler. So let's go ahead and skip out on the Acme. But let's try a different style. I don't want to do VCA. Mostly because I don't have a lot of VCA plugins, styled plugins, but I do have a Verimue style, and this thing sounds really, really, really good. It's probably going to take a second to load. It's going to ask me. I have a subscription for this. Or not a subscription. I'm sorry. I bought it. I just do online cloud stuff. Auth. All right. So here is our Verimue. So again, over here, Verimue, slow and pumping can act as a leveler or add a little bit of bounce. If we look at this, we do have attack and release times here. So just going by our chart, we'll try a few of these, but leveler, medium attack, very medium to slow release. So let's put it medium slow, and we'll play it. I'll mess with the threshold, probably get some gain up and bypass it.
I'm lying on the floor. Everything hurts when I'm sober. Memories from the night before. I thought we said this was over.
So this one's slightly different. It definitely holds on to it, but I feel like I can hear like the release of it. I can hear it letting go. And it seems kind of slow. Because you can hear it when she gets louder, it compresses a little bit more, but then she goes into another line and it takes a second before the volume gets back up. Let's listen again.
I'm lying on the floor.
I think it's this one specifically.
Everything hurts when I'm sober.
So you can kind of hear when she hits that note, and you can watch the meter. So the meter takes a little bit longer to get back. So maybe, you know, it seems like it's just grabbing it a little too long. So why don't I just make the release a little faster?
I'm lying on the floor. Everything hurts when I'm sober. Memories from the night before. I thought we said this was over.
So it's definitely a different character. It has more movement than the optical compressor, than the LA2A. There's more movement going on for sure. Here, let's just we'll swap them out. So now it's LA2A.
I'm lying on the floor. Everything hurts when I'm sober. Memories from the night before. I thought we said this was over, but you keep coming back for more.
So, you know, here is kind of an artistic decision. Which one do you want to go with? You could go with the optical, and it's perfectly fine choice. It sounds great, really hugs it and keeps it leveled into place. Or you could go with the Verimu over here, which also kind of hugs it in place, but is a little bit more bouncy and pumpy to it. So that's one of those. Either one of these could work fine. It's just which way do you want to go? So I'll go the classic route. We'll just go LA2A. And let's listen. Let's just listen a little bit more, and see kind of what stands out volume wise. Let's listen.
I'm lying on the floor. Everything hurts when I'm sober. Memories from the night before.
Ah, that snare. That was the weakest snare I think I've heard ever. So listening to the snare, it's like if you think of the leading response right there, we zoom in, it definitely, the transient material definitely cuts through. You can hear it, and it kind of pokes out in the mix of everything. Let me back it up.
Memories from.
So I kind of want to say that the transient on that is too loud. I want to take the transient and push it back in there, so it doesn't stick out as much, right? If we're thinking sound stage wise, the snare is too much in front. It's too bright. It's too quick. So let's try and push it back and kind of tame the transient right there. So again, we have several options. Tame transient, we can do FET, VCA, or diode. Ratio, since ratio does make a difference here on what you want to do, let's try a FET. Let's try the purple. The purple sounds great. And it's real responsive. MNOP. So what for now, I'm just going to solo it and play it. We're looking at this, like I keep saying, all of these compressors are kind of their own little thing. And this one, once again, there's no there's no threshold control. It's set internally. So it's going to be based on the input and output knobs. So we'll just hit play. I think this is going to loop. Hopefully it doesn't loop too fast. Oh, it's not going to loop. What is it? This one. Okay. So let's look over here. So we want a ratio 3-to-1 of high or higher. So we're at a ratio, this is the ratio switch, 4-to-1. To kind of tame the transient, fast attack, medium slow release. Let's try that. So the attack on this thing's actually, the attack and release is actually backwards. You move it to the right to make it go faster and left to make it go slower. So I'll play it, kind of boost, try to get the levels, get it reacting to it, and see what happens. So that's with a very fast attack, and it's kind of maybe kind of deceiving to hear. Let me play it again, and I'll bypass it a couple times. So you can whenever you bypass it, it's unless you guys are on headphones, like if y'all are just listening on your phone, you're probably not going to hear this stuff. But if you're listening on headphones or speakers, what you really kind of notice is it does push that initial leading little transient back into itself, and you can hear it whenever it's bypassed. But what it's also doing is it's taking the second half of this and kind of turning it up. So you're hearing a little bit more of the splash go versus when it's bypassed. But, you know, to help push it in the back, let me play it with everything else. It'll probably, you'll probably be able to notice it a bit more. I'll just play a little loop. So first we'll do without, then we'll do with.
Sober.
Sounds real, I don't know, it sounds kind of flat and lifeless, but it just pokes out a bit much, right? So I want to take off the poking out part of it.
Sober. Memory sober. Memory sober. Memory.
It's kind of hard to hear. You can definitely hear something happen to the tail because what's happening is it's clamping down on the front, but it's letting the tail kind of go by itself. Let's try messing with the release time. I'll make it real slow, and then I'll make it real fast for the second one. So remember, the knobs are backwards on this thing.
Sober. Memory sober. Memory sober. Memory sober.
So you can kind of hear what's going on. It's with the tail because, you know, the release is on the second half of the waveform. There's the initial attack, and then there's how long does it take to let go. So if I have it let go real fast and attack real fast, it's just kind of shaving off the initial, you know, burst of sound. So it's just kind of shaving off the initial burst of sound and then letting it go pretty quickly. Now, if I have the release on there long, it holds onto that, so it kind of clamps down to the front, but then the end kind of blossoms out, so to say.
Sober. Memory sober. Memory.
It definitely, with a faster release, it definitely pushes it forward versus pushing it back. So, you know, for this, I'm gonna keep the kind of long release. Let's just kind of keep listening.
Memories from the night before. I thought we said this was over, but you keep coming back for more. And I'm the only one that you call when I know you're headed for the door. Yeah.
So one, I think it's this thing. This came in and kind of sticks out also.
And I'm the only one that you call when you're lonely. I know you're headed.
It just kind of sticks out too much. You know, I could try turning the volume down on it. Let's see what that does. Because that's, you know, kind of what we're trying to do is the front end of it sticking out. It's not that it's bad. It's just that initial transient, you know, kind of takes me back. It doesn't sit well with everything.
I know you're headed for the door, yeah, but you don't wanna leave me.
Even volume wise, you know, it just doesn't. It sticks out too much, right? So sticking out too much, the transient is too apparent. So we kind of want to tame the transient a little bit. So we could do the FET, VCA, diode. Let me see. Actually, let me see what we got. You know, it's fun to use multiple things. Okay, let's use this Vertigo compressor. So this is a VCA compressor, which, you know, according to our sheet, can mean it's practically anything. I know this compressor specifically because it is it's kind of quick and it's kind of pumpy. So we can probably tame it with the right attack time. So this one does have a threshold control, so I can kind of move it down until I start getting a reaction. It also has ratios, so we can mess around with the ratio here too. attack and release. So let's just kind of, I'm going to solo it. I'll just do these three. I wonder, hopefully you guys can hear it. I'll turn it up some. So it definitely made me blink whenever I heard that. So let's try the attack. Might as well make it as fast as possible. And if we want to make it, you know, I say 3 to 1 or higher. It's at 2 to 1 right now. Let's just try 10 to 1. So whenever it goes over, it turns it down by times 10. So I'll loop play this and we'll kind of mess with it. And as I change the release or the attack up, you'll hear it let more of that transient through. Like all of a sudden you're like blinking again because it hurts. So bypassed, engaged. So you can really hear it, you know, push to the back of everything. So now let's kind of get that to sit in volume wise.
And I'm the only one that you call when you're lonely. I know you're headed for the door, yeah, but you don't wanna leave me.
So that, you know, that's a huge difference. I'll bypass it for the first 2 and then engage on the last one.
I know you're headed for the door, yeah, but you don't wanna leave me.
You know, it sits very well, and we're totally destroying the front end transient on that thing, which I'm fine with because it stuck out too much. Compressors, more than anything, you have to really think of what you want to accomplish with it. Let's concentrate. I'm going to get rid of the vocals, and we will just kind of concentrate on just the drums, and let's see how they interact. And I'll mute everything else but the drums. Yeah, let's move it over here to where the bass comes in. So right off the bat, I can see I'm clipping over here. Say that. There we go. So something's causing me to clip. Now let's look. We are post fader metering. So that means that this volume directly impacts what we see here. In this case, I want to see what's happening before I adjust the actual fader, so I can see what's going into it. Because if it's clipping going into it, well, you know, I need to fix that, because just doing it afterwards isn't going to fix anything. It's kind of right there. I think that there are some volume problems. I'm just going to move some of these down. Okay. Well, for now, that's perfectly fine. So I'm going to put it back post fader metering, because now I know what's going in already isn't clipping, so we're good there. So listening to the drums, we have them combined together on this auxiliary return track. So part of what's going on that I kind of feel is the drums are kind of mundane. They're pretty boring. If we listen to it, it sounds okay. It's just it seems flat, right? Um, so one thing that we need to do is try to like liven it up. So if we can get things kind of pumping and moving together, it would probably liven things up for the drums. So we have a few pump and bounce, pump and bounce. We have a few options. Veramu, FET's a different reason why I put it there. But Veramu, a VCA compressor or a diode compressor. For this, let's kind of listen to the kind of the two most famous for drums. Well, okay, two of the most popular for drums. VCA compressor. Remember we had talked and said it was like the SSL bus compressor. That's what the Vertigo is based off of, right? So we've already tried it. We've already tried the same compressor on that little drum part, and it did some business for us. Let's see what we can get it to do on the actual drum bus. So I have over here 3-to-1 and higher. Yeah, we'll try that. You know, none of this is the gospel. Attack, I have fast, release medium fast. So let's do attack. I won't do it really, really fast, and I'll kind of leave it here. Now let's kind of see what we can do to get things moving. And one of our key indicators for getting things to move is going to be watching the VU meters or the peak reduction meters. And what we want to happen is we want the meter to move. We don't, we want it to move, but we also want it to return to zero. Otherwise it's constantly down lower in volume than where it would sit normally. But anyways, let's just kind of mess around with this and see what we can make happen. So there's definitely some sort of character going on. Let me make up the gain for it. So you can definitely feel it pump and move, and it's reacting, but it's not reacting in time with itself. It feels still kind of disconjoined. So basically, we're getting the movement, but we're not getting the movement we want, right? And the way to set the movement is with the attack and release. So let's play with that. I know I have it said, it says fast attack, medium fast release, but there's no rubber stamp to this stuff. You got to do it and listen. So what I'll do now is I'll play it the way it is, and then we'll adjust the attack and release, maybe the threshold, to get it moving the way we want. Because it's moving right now, it's just feels discombobulated. So listen as we go through. Real flat. Really, really flat. Aw. So it's definitely adjusting it. I ended up going with like a kind of slowish attack, kind of fastest release. So again, let's just play with just the attack time and see what happens. So you can hear it reacting way crazy. Yeah, and then just the release times. Actually, I'm just gonna mess around with both. it's just these two settings for this song, the 0.10 second, millisecond attack time, and it's like this 0.6 right here. It just, for whatever reason, it just clicks, and it just sounds good. And when you bypass it, everything goes a little flat. You know, things weren't moving together as they were whenever it's engaged. Let's try and recreate that. But let's try that Vermu compressor, because that on the vocals was definitely way more bouncy. So let's try it here. Let me change some of this stuff. And let's see what happens. Now I have fast and medium fast. So fast, medium fast, about there. So let's see what happens with this on the drums to try and make things pump and bounce nicely. It's. I mean, you can definitely hear it bounce more. I'm going to play with the attack and release times here, and we'll see what happens. You can hear it go almost totally flat and lifeless whenever it's a really slow attack and really slow release. It's acting like an optical compressor, like a leveler. And we don't really want that. So let's try and get it to grab the initial transient, and then once it's grabbing it like we want it to, then we want to set the release to release in rhythm with the drums. And you just kind of do that by ear. Attack, let's see what's up. I'm just going to put it to the release to medium. Let's see if we can get it pumping the way we want. Then we figure out how to make it release the way we want. One more time. Just somewhere right in that area, it just gels. It just gels together, definitely. I'll bypass it on this one. You can really, like, when that kick drum hits, you can really like feel this, like, you know, little like hug that it does to it. That sounds really cool. I mean, I do like this one a lot, but we do have our other compressor over here. You know, that's we're trying the same thing with two different types of compressors. Our VCA over here, our Vermu over here. So let's try. I'll bypass it, play it. Let me just loop this thing. I'll bypass it, play it, let it play through, and just kind of bypass things and work with it. All right. So this is nothing, and then you'll see me engage them here, but you'll see the bypass turns there. Bypassed. Vertigo. Bypass. False start. I mean, between those two, oh man. I mean, all of this is subjective, but the Vertigo, our VCA compressor. Oh, it says VCA. Our VCA compressor definitely is more on top of it. Like you can hear it release fast. You can hear it, get it fast. It's still doing, it's doing the pumping and breathing thing. It's adding to the rhythmic quality of the drums, but it's adding it in a different way from the Veramu, from this one over here. The Veramu is much more rubber bandy, where it has like this smooth hug that just completely contours the drums, but definitely exaggerates the levels. It exaggerates whenever the kick drum hits, and pushing back and forth. Whereas the Vertigo is just a little bit faster, and tone wise, it sounds a little different. So I think I'm gonna go with the Pulsar. Yeah, for this song, I don't think the VCA is the right thing to put on there. Now, that said, this song is a little bit more smooth and delicate sounding. If I was doing like a hardcore rap song or whatever, the banging 808s and stuff, I want to enhance that. Like I want it to be a little bit more aggressive and in your face, which is and punchy, which is the Vertigo was, whereas the Pulsar, the Veramu over here, is just a little bit more bouncy and rubbery and stuff. So for different schools of thought, different songs and stuff like that, makes it changes your choice on things. But let's keep listening. We can still kind of set some of these percussive elements in their place. I feel like they're a little too up front. Let's listen to, what is this? Yeah, that's just too in my face. I don't want that so in my face. So let's check out the reverb. Oh, I'm giving it a bunch of reverb. But look, I got the reverb muted. Yeah, that's fine. This thing, what is that? We could probably add a bunch of reverb to that to kind of set it in space. That sounds kind of cool. Now this thing, I definitely, when it got to the louder parts, it definitely, I blinked. I was like, oh, that kind of hurt. So for that thing, I definitely want to tame the transient, and I want to tame it as much as I can. So let's see. We have some options. But I want to grab something that I know is fast. That can grab it. Oh, let's try the let's try the UAD version of their original FET. So again, this one has the threshold set internally. So the input and output gain right here is gonna change the threshold. Remember, the attack knobs on this are backwards. So I really want to just destroy the initial transient. So I'm just going to put it as fast as it can go. Why don't we just do a crazy high ratio too, just see what happens. Yeah, kind of down, kind of okay with that. Let me bypass it. It's that initial crack of whatever, the side stick or whatever that thing is supposed to be. It just, like the 1176, since I have it on a very fast attack and very high ratio, it's just destroying that, which is what I want because I thought it stuck out too much. Let's just do it with everything. I'm with that. I am so with that. Man, that worked out way better. Um, I mean, we could try the purple in its place, but no, let's not do that. Let's. We do have the claps right there, and the claps definitely sit out front. They're kind of in our way. So we can add some reverb to it to set it into space and into the space we want. Let's try some of that. Kind of down with that. Now here's one that we could probably try enhancing the transient on it. So let's try that. So if we're going to enhance FET, VCA, or diode, let's try. Oh, let's go back to that Vertigo one, the VCA, and I was like, remember, like it makes it more punchy. So let's try this enhanced transient and this 3-to-1 slow and fast. This is just kind of like a starting guidelines. We'll try 4-to-1 slow attack fast release. Slow attack fast release. Kind of get the volume back up because it's turning the volume down. Oh, versus. Oh, that's interesting. It definitely enhances that transient, but it feels a little jumpy, which may not be a bad thing. Maybe I just feel like it needs to be in the pocket. I like the way it's hitting, but it just doesn't seem to be letting go right. So maybe I'll try the next one. Go with that. Bypassed. That's interesting. Seems to be losing it a little bit. But you can definitely hear the claps kind of jump up in volume, but you also like kind of hear it give it. I don't know. It's kind of like a weird. It's the way that it releases. It releases in a natural way versus an unnatural way. Versus like if I had it long. Still doesn't sound bad, but let's try real fast. It's a little jumpy. I mean, it definitely pushes it out further. And the longer the release, the more it pushes it back. And right around 0.3 is kind of where I liked it. I mean, is it probably turn the volume? Oh, somebody turn the volume down here. Who does that? But like I like the way it sounds for sure. Let's go ahead and just bypass everything real quick. Let me put it all in the same. And kind of let's hear the difference on this. I may bypass, what's the buttons? That button? Those buttons? Yeah. Hold on, is it this buttons? No, this buttons. Okay, there we go. It's one of these quick keys. So we'll play the drums, and I'll bypass everything in there so we can kind of hear how everything, how the compressors change the drums. What's crazy is you can hear how round the kick drum gets. It just like it sounds like the kick drum gets louder in volume. I'll do it again and bypass these, but also bypass the reverbs that we got going on. I mean, you can. It's crazy because it's a huge difference, and it's only a couple well placed compressors and a couple well placed reverbs. Like, we haven't even started on EQ, but it definitely, when everything bypasses, everything just goes flat. Everything, all the music, all the drums and everything kind of stays in its own lane. Nothing interacts together, and that's what's going on when everything's bypassed. Is nothing's interacting, nothing's moving together. Like, you want to fix the problems, which is mostly the transients, and then you want to enhance it too, so things poke out, which is kind of where the pumping and enhance goes. The leveler is just for locking things in place. And once we're going to move to the instruments here in a second. But man, I mean, it's just such a huge difference. And it's something that doesn't really, it's not, it doesn't come intuitively. With EQ can kind of come intuitively. You can kind of listen to stuff and be like, I don't like this about it, and then use the chart and figure it out. With compression, it's just a little bit different thought process. You have to think in terms of volume levels, which is the transients and the movement, whereas the EQ is all about frequency. So between the two, you get things moving, you get the frequencies right, and then we're using reverb on like a couple well-placed things, and we're using our auxiliaries channels so we can kind of, EQ it before, put some stereo imaging on it afterwards. We can really customize that. Um, it makes a pretty big difference. Do you guys want to? We'll do another 10-minute break, and then we'll come back and we'll add in the instruments, and kind of look at compression things for them, maybe some grouping stuff, because I think that there is quite a bit of things going on. But yeah, let's do that. Let's meet back at 1:14, and then we'll go through the instruments and things.
Sounds good.
All right.
Cool. Okay. So let's start by adding the instruments. Well, let's start by looking at the instruments. For that, I'm going to open the tracks view right here. It's with this little back arrow and right arrow. The reason I do that, oh my gosh, there's so much stuff hidden. The reason I do that is because if I select something, like if I select this, and the name is too long, I can look over here and see what it says. So we have a guitar, piano, motif. Motif is a type of keyboard that has a bunch of different sounds. It's not just the piano. If we click here, pads, what is this? Guitar accent and piano atmosphere. Interesting. These beat producers, they'll just call stuff whatever. But what we'll do is we'll go in order of the song. So we'll start by listening to the motif. I'm going to go ahead and hide this now. And I'll unmute it. Instead of flipping back and forth to get to this little fader right here, I have my I.O. set up. Again, how you show that, you click on the little, tabbed arrows, and you can click I.O. And what that does is it'll give you access to the volume fader if you click that little tiny fader button right there. So I'll play it. We'll kind of get it level-wise where we think it should be because we don't really know at this moment because everything's not in there. But let's listen. Interesting. I don't hear anything compression-wise, but it definitely does get lost whenever the kick drum pops in. Let's just do it again, because we may just put a little EQ on that and keep going. Yeah, I don't know. Compression-wise, I don't think it needs that. It does sound like there's some kind of like mud in there. Let me see if I can. Where is this picture? Where's this picture? I think. Oh, that's not the picture. I don't think that's the picture. I think it's this one. Yeah. So there's just a little mud in there. It's just not sitting right. Remember, I think Muddy and Boxy are flip-flopped here. So let's just kind of EQ 250 or something. I mean, you can hear it without the kick drum, but I'll sweep around until we find it. I'm just going to use the plain old channel strip set to kind of a high Q. Let me back it up. So I can definitely hear something there. So I'm just going to cut it. I'm going to cut it a lot too. Make it a little brighter. So here's a good idea of when to use a compressor and when not to use a compressor. Remember, we're either going to mess with transients, or we're going to mess with the way something moves, or we're going to mess with the way it stays. We want it to stay in place. All of that has to do with volume level shifts, right? So we're talking the peak transient, which is this initial leading edge. That's what we can change. If we look at this, there's not a whole lot of things going on volume wise. There's like a little bit whenever stuff comes in. volume wise, there's not a lot we can do with that because there's not a lot going on. So in that case, you may want to skip a compressor. It sits fine. We cut out some mud, uh, but there's not a lot of volume difference to manipulate. So that's kind of a good key of going, I shouldn't put a compressor on that, because if you put a compressor on it, it's just going to turn, it's going to turn the transients down and it's going to turn everything up. Everything's going to get flat. And that's what you don't want. You don't want things to get flat. You want things to move. So we'll just keep listening, see what else there is. This piano kicks in right there. Let's listen to the piano. I'll pull up the little volume fader. So already it sounds like it's just going to blend in with this. So I'll just back it up. So just listening to those two and remembering what I had just said, there's got to be volume differences for us to manipulate. If they're not there, you can't really manipulate them. So they're not really there. If we listen to both of them, there's some EQ problems between the two. When the piano comes in, it doesn't really make room. So again, I'll just put on an easy EQ just to kind of fix that since we're here. We'll look at it. There's something weird, muddy, boxy. It's something in the mid. So it seems to sit better. I'm going to play it, and I'll unmute both, and then when the piano comes in, bypass both, and then when the piano comes in, I'll pop them in, and we can kind of hear the EQ difference. You can hear like things just sit a little bit better in that. So let's just go ahead and keep going. We have some interesting stuff coming up. The guitar track, if we're looking at it, there is some transient stuff going on. There's some volume differences, so there may be something we can do there. Let's just listen and get the volume right, and I'll pull up the little fader here instead. Okay, so now we're in the hook, and the guitar definitely has some volume differences from the transients. You can hear the strumming. I'll just solo that. Let's do it solo real quick. And it's interesting to listen to it versus the drums, because you feel the drums are hitting and they're moving, but now we have this acoustic guitar rhythm on top of it that's playing in perfect time, but it's like volume wise, it's not moving with the drums. So we can, when we're talking about making something move in time, we're talking about making stuff pump and bounce in time. It's to enhance, the rhythmic movements and align them. So let's try putting something on that will do a nice pump and bounce. So we have Veramue. I do really like the way that thing sounds, and it moves so well. It's very rubbery and bandy. So maybe that's the right one. If we go with one of the VCAs, remember we had that Vertigo one, and we were like, oh, it's real. It seems to enhance transients. It's real punchy, even though it does the bouncy thing. It's just a little too punchy. I don't think I want that here. I think that Veramu will work better. And this is based off of past experience. This is me getting to know the compressor and getting to know how it reacts. So we'll try middle and middle. Let's see if we can get the acoustic to kind of move in time. And keep an eye on the VU meter because we want the kick drum to hit, and we want it to kind of compress there and move back to get it in motion with the drums. So let's just see what we can do. That sounds pretty cool. But you can watch the VU and you can see it bounce in time, right? And we're trying to lock this acoustic guitar in time with the drums. So therefore the VU meter should move in time with it. So I'll play it and I'll bypass it. I mean, you can really hear it. I mean, you can really hear it and feel it start moving better with the drums. As far as attack and release, remember I said pumpy. Let's look at my fast attack, medium fast release. So I'm definitely doing a fast attack. I'm doing a faster release. Remember, the release is just to get it back in time, right? The attack is how you want it, to squish and when you want it to squish. But the release is very important for the timing of the song. So if I move the release, I'll play it and I'll move to different releases, and you'll see the VU slip out of groove with the drums a little bit. And then as it's speeding up, you'll see it more lock and you'll feel it lock. So let's go ahead and just do real slow. It's just that last setting. It's like you can just, man, you feel it lock in so much. Man, yeah, it's just that we had an opportunity to mess with the transients, and we did, and it works great. It sounds really cool. So let's kind of back up though, because a few other things got added here. Let's listen to this piano atmosphere. I have no idea what this is. It's been a while since I worked on this song, but let's listen. Pull up my little fader volume. So we're looking at it. There's not much transient material to move or change or anything. So we can't really use a compressor on it because we're just going to make it flat, and it's already all encompassing, so to say. But you can hear some competition between the motif and the piano and the other one. And it just seems like it builds a lot of mud, even just soloed by itself. So just real easy, like I will pull up channel strip. I know for a fact it is mud and boom and tubby. So we're going to check everything below 500 hertz and just kind of sweep around. You can hear it. It may be slightly loud in volume too. Still kind of guessing. But it's just real interesting. Those three instruments all just have like the same frequency range, basically. So there's just not enough room for them. This is the motif, the piano, the atmosphere. So getting those to sit will be more of an EQ job, but we'll keep going. We're just doing our first little pass through. I'm interested in these pads. I forgot what these pads sound like, but if you look, there's something going on. There's some sort of volume difference, so we may be able to exploit that with compression, but let's just listen. I'm going to go ahead and pull up the fader thing. So that is really interesting, because it comes in with like that hard stab, and then the second two lines. You can see I didn't do the editing on this; I just mixed it. But you can see that there's definitely a few different notes with very large volume differences. So if we so we can kind of exploit that. It does seem like it just hangs over everything and doesn't quite fit. It doesn't quite fit with the guitar, the drums. I'm not expecting these pads to really fit because there's not a whole lot of volume differentiation in it. We can only really mess with stuff with compressors when there is a big volume difference. But let's listen to this again, because I'm thinking we could kind of do like what we did with the acoustic guitars and get it to move in time with it. But let's check it out. Oh, come on. Okay, that is, yeah, we can work with that. We can make that initial transient in the dun 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 or whatever it does. We can get that locked in a little bit better with the pumping and bouncing. We've been using the Veramu for quite a bit of stuff. I want to try something else. Let's try a VCA. But we're going to try a different hardware unit, analog modeled hardware unit. The Shadow Hills Class A is really good, really cool. It's very confusing to look at because you have a left and a right side, right? But what's weird about this is, so this is actually two compressors in one. At the top, we have the optical section. So it'll actually say optical threshold, optical gain. And then at the bottom here, these 5 knobs, this is they call it discrete. It's a VCA circuit. So we can kind of mess with both. Now, just knowing what we know on our piece of paper over here, optical is almost always slow. There's no attack or release times on most of them. And it's great as a leveler. Well, we don't want to level this part here, right? We want to make it move with everything. We don't need to mess with the transients, but it has transients that we can use to manipulate it. So I'm just going to solo it, and we are going to see what happens with the optical. So it's definitely moving. It's kind of hard to hear by itself like that. So it's definitely moving. But here's the thing, like it's kind of pumping, kind of like that Acme did. Let's drop it in with the beat, because the downfall of optical compressors is there's no attack or release times, right? So while yes, it's working off volume, we don't get to pick how fast it comes in and when it lets it go. And like we saw on the acoustic guitar, it's all about the attack and release to get things moving together. So let's just listen to it with just the optical threshold going, or optical compressor, no attack and release times that are adjustable by us. And we'll kind of bypass it and stuff. It moves. It moves, and it kind of moves in time to the song, but it's just not really hitting the rhythm. The release seems too fast. The attack just seems weird. It doesn't seem to be grabbing it whenever the beat grabs it, you know? So that's kind of the downfall of not having the attack and release time. So let's try, I'm going to turn this all the way back down so it is off. Let's try the discrete section, which again is a VCA, which we were saying VCAs are the most diverse type. You can do transient stuff, leveler, or pumping. So let's try that here. I'm just going to solo it so we can kind of hear what's going on. For pumping, what I put on there, fast attack, medium fast release. So let's kind of get to that because this is on the slowest attack. Let's go pretty fast, medium fast. We do get a ratio. We're going to mess around with the ratio for sure. But I'm going to move the threshold down until I see stuff happening, and then we'll go from there. Sounds kind of cool. Let's see what happens. This is a 3-to-1 ratio. That's kind of hard to see, right? It's massive. This is a 3-to-1. So let's move it to 6-to-1 to see how it sounds. It's definitely a lot more pumpy. There's more reaction going on. So I adjust the attack and release time. Man, maybe this high ratio will work. Let's try it. Let's see what happens when everything pops in. Again, I'm not going to mess with the threshold, but I'll mess with the attack and release. You can kind of hear with the longer release time, it kind of gets lost. And the attack time definitely is what starts the pumping feel. Like having that right, there's only 6 of these to choose from. But let's listen to that again and kind of mess around with it and see what happens. You can hear it do it a little bit. Let me bypass this more. It definitely sits better with everything, having it in. It almost feels like it gets pushed into the background, and whenever it's bypassed, it just kind of floats along the top doing whatever it wants to do, which isn't what the other parts of the song are doing. So yeah, this is a good candidate for pumping and bouncing, and that's pumping and bouncing is like the hardest one to learn. Um, that's kind of why I'm going over that. It's also, I feel like it's also the most important use of compressors, getting stuff to move together. So let's keep going down the line. What else we got? So this kind of covers this section. There is a second guitar part right here. Just looking at it, there may be some stuff we can do, but let's listen. Let's listen and see what happens. So there are like the guitar strumming, the tuck 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 tuck. All of those are little transients that we can manipulate. If I zoom in, you can see them all, right? So we have a volume difference, so we can do something here. What do we want to do? Kind of depends on what we hear. The initial, the initial guitar sound, just in general, it's kind of bright. The initial attack of it starts out kind of strong. Let's listen. And then when everything comes back in, you can kind of feel it doesn't quite lock. Like if you're bouncing your head whenever the kick drum comes in, it just feels like the guitar is like slightly fast, and I think that's because the initial lead on transient's too loud. So call me crazy. We're gonna try combining a couple of these two. We're gonna try combining the tame the front transient with a pump and bounce. So this is, if you look, it's kind of tame transients fast with the medium slow-ish release. All this stuff is kind of up for grabs, except for the attack time. But it's all kind of up for grabs in the release because that's when you time stuff. So let's try. We get our choice of compressors. Since we went ahead with the Veramue on this one, let's go with the Veramue on this one also. Let's just see if we can make it move a little bit differently. Or you know what? Hold on. No guitar sim on that. Here's a good question, right? If we're looking at the guitar parts and we solo it, this one is almost like, there's like some half notes in there, I'm gonna say, and then there's a little bit of quarter notes. If we look at this is all quarter notes. 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4. Whereas this one is like 1 2 3 3 4. However it goes. So could we just copy this one over and see what that sounds like? They're both the same, instrument, kinda, but they're playing different note or different rhythms. One's playing, every half note, dun 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 dun, and the other one's playing every quarter note, dun 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 dun, or however music works. So let's just try. We're just gonna paste it over, and I'm gonna solo it, and let's see what happens. Because if we look what we had going on, we had a fast attack and a really fast release. And it sounded good, and it locked things into place. So let's just cross our fingers and see what happens. definitely sounds cool. It seems to be in time with the song, so I'm going to back it up and we'll play it and listen to it. You can really hear it when the kick comes in. It seems to be kind of timed. It still just kind of feels a little out of sync. So let's just mess with it. And it should, honestly, it should feel out of sync because they're playing two different rhythmic parts, right? So we have one that's playing half notes and we have one that's playing quarter notes. Of course, it's rhythmically going to be out of sync, but how do we fix that with our compressor here, especially since we already have the fastest release going? So let's just kind of listen. This may be, maybe I just need to back off the attack some, maybe compress less. I don't know. Let's kind of listen. Oh, that sounds really cool right there. I'm gonna hit save because I haven't saved this entire time. Man, that sounded really cool right there. It's weird. It kind of locked in. Let's listen to it again. I'm gonna listen to it with the kick whenever the drums come in, but we're gonna mess with the threshold and attack again. But I kind of like this setting right here. So they both sound kind of cool with the really fast attack and lower threshold. Or I'm sorry, a really fast attack and higher threshold, so it doesn't react as much, but it reacts faster, versus a really slow attack and low threshold, so it reacts slower, but there's, you're trying to make up with it with the lower threshold. They both sound really cool. And this is one of those spots where it's kind of your choice of how you want to go with this. I kind of liked the really fast attack because it gave it extra bounce. Let's try that. Let me just get it dialed in. Like, it just feels so much, when I bypass it, it feels not locked in with the drums at all. And whenever I put it back in, the drums and that move right. Bypassed. It's a big difference. And when you guys are compressing anything, definitely use the bypass. That way you know that you're actually doing good versus mucking everything up. So we have, oh God, there's more tracks. Let's listen to what is this? Guitar, accent, verse 2. We'll deal with that later. Let's look and see what else is going on here. Oh man, I didn't realize there was so much stuff. Those are some effects or something. Let's listen to, what's this synth? Looks. So these two these two play together, so they should also lock in together. They're also similar kind of sounds. It almost sounds like it's supposed to be this motif. That's like a lot of filler. To me, it feels like filler. There's not a whole lot we can do transient wise. You know, there's not a whole lot of volume difference besides when it first comes on. Let's listen by itself. I'm not sure I want to mess with that. Compression wise, volume wise, yeah, whatever. It's kind of cool. So let's go ahead and keep going. Let's find out what this motif trial is. Wonder if that's, well, okay. That's interesting. Let's listen to this with everything in. We're going to mess with this guitar accent later. Now, I'm going to say that there is enough transients in there that we could do something with that. Especially, I think this is the dead zone before the kick hits. So let's go to where the kick hits. Is it? So once again, let's do a pump and breathe, because it just right now it just kind of feels like it floats over stuff. We have our choices: Veramio, FET, VCA, diode. We've used Veramio a bunch. FET, we'll get to why I put FET in this later. VCA, we've used VCA. I do have a diode compressor on here that's like a clone of a Neve thing. It's the Lindale, if I can find the L's, 254E. This is you know, I put diodes under pumpy and bouncy and enhance and tame transients, but this one can also kind of work as a leveler, so we'll have to be careful of that. If we did it with a leveler, it'd be a little bit lower ratio, I believe. So let's try it with a bit higher. Let's try 6.1. Let's be bold. And I'm going to solo it. So this one's interesting because this little red thing is the meter. So it should move down and kind of bounce upwards. And the gain reduction are the black numbers on the side. Let me solo this. So we can see it move, and it looks like it's moving in time. But let's hear it with everything else. That kind of works for me. It seems to be moving. I'll bypass it on podcast. It seems to move okay. It seems to go with everything. Oh my God, there's so much stuff. All right, well, let's listen to Guitar Sense 2. So that's an interesting sound. Because this is like a big transition part, and like you can kind of hear it move around a bunch. Has like a tremolo effect, so it like cuts out in and out on rhythm. Let's I don't want it to have that effect. It's built into the sound, but I just want to hold it constant in a spot. I feel like it dips in and out too much. Right there, it kind of gets a little too loud. So let's use something as a leveler. Let's figure, hey, like we just want to hold it in place. I might as well go with good old fashioned LA2A because it's a classic for a reason. So let's hear kind of what this can do in solo. Remember, it's just peak reduction. Definitely holds it in one spot, which I think is what we need right there. It works. That little transition's slightly odd, but let's listen to Guitar Sense 7. Guitar Sense 7 when you need 6 other guitars. Okay, this is interesting. If we listen to this sound, it's just a different version of this regular guitar. I'm a liar. It's not. Maybe this one. Sounds like it's a different version of that. It's kind of stacked on top of itself. So it sounds weird when both are playing. Let's play both together. Let me move that up there so this makes more sense. So we're just having them soloed. Okay, let's zoom in on the transients and see what's going on. It almost sounds like it's the same part with different effects on it. But I can definitely feel that they don't sit well together. And that may be because one, has a bit of movement going on and the other one doesn't. So it seems really flat. What we do know is we know that the timing for this guitar, the attack and release settings, it's set well, and it looks like they're playing the exact same thing. So I don't know. What if we just copied these over? And we'll just try the exact same attack and release settings that worked for the other one because they're playing basically the same thing. Let's listen. Like Like you can definitely hear it whenever I bypass it. I'm gonna bypass both of them. Is this the button? No. Is this the buttons? No. No, I thought that was. Oh, it's those buttons. No, it's those buttons. There's one of these quick keys. Oh, come on. Oh, they aren't on the same. That's why. All right, so I'll play it and I'll bypass one, bypass the other, bypass both. We'll kind of listen to it. You can definitely feel it. So let's listen and see if our volume is right on it. And again, you just click this little fader thing. Timpani. How do we miss the timpani? That doesn't sound like a timpani. So everything sounds, things sound like they're locked in together a lot better. Now let's kind of hear the difference from the before and after. I mean, we listened to just the drums, and there was a difference. There was quite a big difference. So I'm just going to select everything from here to here. I think it's this one. Yeah. And I'll bypass. So this is going to have our compressors, and we only used 3 EQs, just compressors, a little bit of reverb. I'll turn off the reverb later, but let's hear the before and after. Not a whole lot there. There's not a lot going on. So you can really hear it in the chorus because that's when everything's going. Yeah, so this is by no means everything that we're gonna do to this song. This is just kind of get us going, just kind of show you guys what compressors can do, what they're used for, the general guidelines for how to kind of think about application, because you don't always have to use a compressor. Like you want to use a compressor when you're like, oh, I need to change something very specific that has to do with volume on this. And volume meaning either transients or levels or making things pump and move and bounce. But definitely, try out compressors, y'all, on this project that y'all have going right now. If you want to put compressors on there, like, go for it. Totally go for it. it's not a requirement, but if you feel like messing with stuff, please, like, by all means, mess with it. And again, send me stuff early if you want feedback on it. It's really easy for me to like listen on headphones or out in my car. I can do that pretty much anywhere. But what we'll do is we'll come back next week. We won't do this Wednesday. This Wednesday is going to be all projects. I know that there's a couple people that need a little bit of help on this project, or have questions and stuff like that. So like, let's totally use that Wednesday for all of that. And we still, I'm going to let you guys go now, but we still have like another hour, technically an hour of class. So if anybody needs help, message me on Canvas, and we can schedule it, whether it's right now or in 15 minutes, or or if y'all need to schedule it for a different time because you have stuff to do. Just let me know, because I'm available. It's kind of spotchy because I have sessions and stuff like that, but I'm available outside of class hours. This online thing makes that awesome. But anyways, yeah, so we'll pick up next Monday, and we'll go through a bit more. I want to show you guys some sidechaining stuff. We'll probably get into some EQ stuff, and then we're gonna really, work on vocals and effects for vocals, and stuff like that. We'll probably we may go over some automation stuff, but that's gonna kind of be the last thing, is automation and effects, which I think we'll do Monday or something similar. But yeah, that's all I have for today. Do y'all have any questions or anything? All right, you guys. Well, I will see y'all. I'll post Wednesday. I'll post like, hey, today's gonna be a project day, but I'm available. Just to remind you guys that Wednesday will be project day. You don't have to do any Zoom stuff. But then Monday we'll meet back up for a Zoom. And please contact me in the meantime if y'all have questions.
I actually do have a quick question.
Yeah.
It's actually about like just loop playback. For some reason, sometimes I'll try to loop something, and it'll be like on the loop where the play button is. It'll have the loop signal, but it won't actually loop the selection.
So there's a weird thing about that. If I have it on loop, well, let me zoom in more. Let me do it not at a loud part of the song also. Like if you loop play this, for me it loop plays. I think if you have a small section, it may not do it. But if you ever come across loop play not working, check and make sure that you're not in quick punch mode, because I don't think it'll work like that. Oh, well, it will. Call me a liar. That's weird.
So is it just like the mode that it's in that it determines whether it'll work or not?
Yeah. Do you have the little loop around the play button going?
Yeah, like it'll show that like as if it's in loop playback mode, but when I actually select something, it won't, even if it's a long selection, it won't play back or like loop it. I mean,
yeah, because you should be able to select it and have it
yeah.
That. Are you on Pro Tools first or regular?
The full version.
Full version, huh? Man, I wonder if maybe the post roll or pre roll would be in.
Yeah, I feel like it's probably one of those just mini little settings that I have activated somewhere that it doesn't allow it, but I'm not sure what would affect that.
Yeah, make sure quick punch isn't turned on, because I've had issues with that it won't loop, or that is odd. That is odd.
Well, I'll check it out and mess around with some of those things.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Cool. Anybody else got questions or anything? Nope. All good. All right, you guys. Well, then I will see y'all Monday, and I'll post something on Wednesday saying it's project day. So stay safe out in the storm. It's supposed to start raining pretty soon. That's what they say. But anyways, I will see y'all next week.
Bye.
Have a good one.